Hands, Labor and Consciousness. A prelude to the next revolution? By the counterintuitive. Is one thing to understand something at an abstract level, and another to grasp a practical, comprehensive meaning. Thinking about the world without language is abstract, while working on it, as the becoming of a dialectic of the same. Dialectic materialism and historic materialism help us understand the underlying relationships and contradictions between human beings, as well as nature. In such times of global crisis and doom, that can also be understood as a great epoch to frame new dynamic worldviews. Ability to objectively understand reality outside the impositions of heteronormative definitions. Worlding that is not deterministic. As democracy is undermined by several anti-democratic factors and actors, science itself appears fallible, especially when we face several crises at once. In the economy, in social reproduction, in the environment, and in politics, Nancy Fraser, Cannibal Capitalism. As a materialist philosophy, Marxist dialectics emphasize on the importance of real-world conditions. For hundreds of years, evolving within various disciplines, the debate goes on and on over human presence in nature versus the domination of nature itself. The trajectory also includes the presence of functional contradictions within most social relations, between human and non-human subjects. How modern human beings perceive nature, ecosystems, production, and hierarchy. Simply put, a worlding that emerges out of, but is not limited to, the contradictions that occur in social class, including labor, economics, modes of production, and socioeconomic interactions. Friedrich Engels outlined the contradictions as naturally occurring or man-made. A dialectic which is synthesized as a solution that resolves the contradiction, whilst retaining the essence of the phenomena. Take the natural evolution and the power of our hands as an example. As the very source of labor and being human. The liberation of hands from locomotion, in effect, as human evolution into bipedal creatures, set in motion the advent of labor. The earliest human beings began carrying, shaping, making, manipulating, and directing with their hands, unlike any of their quadruped/simian ancestors. Within evolutionary biology, this is considered a decisive development. Bare hands acting intentionally upon surrounding nature. So, take a moment to look at your own hands and literally grasp their importance. As an eternal symbol, a human imprint that can be felt by all. See the Neolithic impression of hands that have survived for more than 15,000 years, as well as the cute hand paintings made by children in preschools all over the world. Hands that connect not just millennia of history, but also leave an ephemeral mark on the world. The hand extends out to other hands as the enormity of a primal connection, Rev Left Radio, between ancient humans and us modern ones. Like Marx and Engels, many more scholars conclude, albeit in differing ways, that human consciousness has a direct relationship to labor. John Bellamy Foster. But is it startling revelation? Especially when we grasp as to how our species has literally evolved by making things with our bare hands for eons. The leap of evolution, from early bipedal foragers to Neolithic toolmakers to the current technological version of humans, are tied to the presence of human as well as animal labor. To be clear, labor didn't just convert nature into material, build societies, create massive pyramids, tall bridges, long roads, superior weapons, etc. It literally made us human. Labor is not just a source of wealth, as some economists believe, but one of the foundations, a decisive force in the making of human beings, biologically, historically, and in the material sense. The above evolution by itself is not just an outcome of natural selection, but the presence of labor in shaping society, its needs and consequent history. Or better understood as the economic and political autonomy, coupled with exploitation, leading to material abundance, opulence, or even poverty. Dialectic materialism. The dialectic of the human hand vis-a-vis labor begins to emerge clearly as the hand is not only the organ of labor, but the product of labor. Dialectics of Nature, 1883. Yes, indeed, one is not discounting the evolution of techniques and corresponding technologies over thousands of years. Over a very long period of time, the hand itself developed in order to accomplish ever-complicated tasks and schemas, in tandem with surrounding nature and resources. One cannot imagine the domestication of animals or the advent of agriculture, transport, construction, art, and crafts, without the confluence of the human mind, hands, and labor. The evolution of the hand, one that became capable of interaction, art, literature, architecture, and science. The same hand which is also capable of throwing a fist during a political rally or an urban riot or during a motley rave. According to Marx, the product of a worker's labor under a capitalist system resulted in feeling alienated. Labor that is eventually disposed off or terminated as a mere body with no value. Not much has changed in terms of alienation and mass exploitation between a Charles Dickens British labor, 1840, to a South African apartheid-era slave, 1960s, to a Bangladeshi sweatshop worker in the 21st century. Marx's predicament, or say the question of alienation, of not just labor but entire modern society, has returned as a point of discourse, confrontation, as well as revolution. Within capitalism's totalitarian reality, there is no real difference between a worker and a cow and a tree or a river. Extending the logic of exploitation to even artists or scientists or writers or entrepreneurs. This can be better understood, as explained by John Bellamy Foster, as the alienation of labor cannot be seen apart from the alienation of nature. The exploitation of nature is based on capital's expropriation of the free gifts of nature, is prescient to enrich our understanding of capitalism, with emerging scholarship and new worlding, by figures such as Jody Dean, Nancy Fraser, and Donna Haraway. Not just new theories and ideas, but also for making new trouble. Capitalism's own laws of motions are coming into conflict with itself, turning itself into something else. Whatever transition, the power to gobble and accumulate everything has itself pushed the system out of its previous definition, balance, and place. The previous logic of extraction, production, and higher capital accumulation has been effectively replaced by capital generating more capital without having to do any real work, unlike 19th and 20th century labor alienation. The exhaustion of the working class is an outcome of the global service sector, which produces capital by not making but serving. Finance capital that is greater than production and capital itself. Jody Dean. The very definitions of work and interpretations of labor have gone through dramatic changes over the last 50 years. According to the writer, capitalism in the 21st century is giving way to new types of feudalism, economies that are often at war with each other. The service sector can also be understood as a global proletariat, engaged in thousands of types of neo-feudal jobs, competition, exchanges, and tendencies. The reality of neo-feudalism is better understood by an Uber driver or a Just Eat delivery girl or a boy doing chores via TaskRabbit, or a content creator on Patreon, or a writer struggling here on Substack. There are 1,000 more examples, but not so much about a diagnosis of our defeat, but more importantly a way out. Jody Dean insists on the revival of the party, of whatever scale and kind nonviolent or direct action, that can directly reject, attack, and dismantle 20th century emancipatory deals, bourgeois reforms, and corresponding think tanks and institutions. At the heart of the matter, it is crisis of care, something that has not been addressed globally, but it remains at the core of a Promethean logic, the worship of capital, industry, technology, and productivism as ends in themselves, extreme mechanistic approach to the environment, social reproduction, as well as the biosphere crisis. Nancy Fraser, Cannibal Capitalism. Social reproduction can be understood as a creation/maintenance of social bonds, vital to the continuity of any society/species, be it human or non-human. Ties between the generations, birthing, raising children, healthcare, healing, and caring for the elderly. Another dimension is sustaining horizontal ties among friends, family, neighborhoods, and community. We know well that the above aspects of social reproduction have been ravaged by neoliberalism over the last 40 years vis-a-vis a liberal technocratic order that has opted for the privatization/monetization of the above ties. There is no such thing as a society, Margaret Thatcher. Such a claim eventually points to the cannibal evolution of 21st century capitalism. And according to Nancy Fraser, the prospects of capitalism, by invading all spheres of life, might destroy its, and more important, our own conditions for survival. Fraser's idea is about the quintessentially populist, immediately comprehensible and effectively powerful. A global dialectic that can attack the root causes of oppression and not just symptoms alone. As a precaution, Fraser believes it is important to reject all extreme right and extreme left totalitarian imaginaries and conspiracies. According to Donna J. Haraway, scientifically speaking, Global capitalism has made the depletion of resources so rapid, convenient, and barrier-free that Earth-human systems have become dangerously unstable in response. Perhaps the only scientific thing to do is revolt. But that is something a majority of current scientists are incapable of, worse as anti-revolutionaries serving this or that project of capitalism. For scholars, feminists, historians, and troublemakers like Donna Haraway, the way beyond the Capitolocene is ripe with fabulation and fiction. It was Haraway who popularized terms like world-making and worlding, Staying with the Trouble, 2016. Worlding as an act or process of bringing a people, culture, ethnicities, etc. into a global sphere of influence. Haraway's tentacular thinking views the human and non-human as inextricably linked in tentacular practices and networks. The troublesome frameworks of degeneration and regeneration at the same time, relevant to materialist philosophy, beyond the barriers imposed by individual disciplines, methods, and expertise. The tentacular are not disembodied figures. They are cnidarians, spiders, fingery beings like humans and raccoons, squid, jellyfish, neural extravaganzas, fibrous entities, flagellated beings, myofibril braids, matted and felted microbial and fungal tangles, probing creepers, swelling roots, reaching and climbing tendrilled ones. The tentacular are also nets and networks, critters in and out of clouds. Tentacularity is about life lived along lines. Less revolutionary and more bioanarchist in such tentacular tendencies, Haraway's reputation is one of the most daring and original thinkers of our time. Charles Darwin passed away in 1882, a few months ahead of Karl Marx's death in 1883. Both visionaries in terms of their fundamental understanding of the planet and its vast ecological and social relationships enriched not just science, but also philosophy, politics, modern ecology, arts, and even 20th century emancipatory spiritual practices, converging also as a return to nature. But what do we really mean by it? The pathways into Marxist ecology and the metabolic rift, understanding the current planetary ecological crisis, and how to build a revolutionary eco-socialist movement in response. According to John Bellamy Foster, dialectics which emphasize real-world conditions must be aligned, brought forward, with every question of exploitation, of labor, of animals, and of nature. The entire biosphere crisis, including arguments based around energy, pollution, global warming, and loss of biodiversity, cannot be decoupled from the metabolism of human beings and nature. There lies a danger in not looking beyond mainstream science. The biosphere crisis, climate change, is one such example. All due credit to the various disciplines attributed to the subject and deeper learning, yet their evolution as part of science cannot be ignored if we are to understand the argument objectively. Historically speaking, for a long time, science has been a means of enhancing the exploitation of labor, and that can't be separated from science conceived as the domination of nature. Return to nature is exactly what is symbolic of hundreds of environmental organizations, big and small, thousands of experts, and their myriad technological interventions. Foster argues further by saying left thinkers, knowledge economy, leaders, and public, who generally ignore ecological questions, or who employed idealist, mechanist, or dualist perspectives have thus robbed the critique of political economy of its real material basis. Long-forgotten British author, Doris Lessing, The Golden Notebook, 1962, wrote, "Marxism looks at things as a whole and in relation to each other." Doris was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2007. Perhaps that is a revolutionary capacity we, the proletarian and not the Promethean, most need today. Why did I write this story? To be honest, I am not really sure. Your hand next to mine, like a primal connection or a temporal imprint of our common concerns. Our labor and its alienated status with nature. In need of new worlding that is biocentric and not technocentric. In any case, I don't see any other available strategy in terms of a local or global response to organize common people further as resistance, as pathways into the future. In Nancy Fraser's words, it's crucial for the left to woo those working-class fractions that are now supporting right-wing populism, those who want to usher in techno-feudalism, magic thinking, and such green abstractions. And that's a delicate but very invigorating operation. They tell us that the runaway capitalist train is about to head over the cliff. A catastrophic realism or global concern. The will to reject a total handover, as well as engage in transition, however small or particular, should be our main concern. Facing up to the planetary emergency, one that is made of ecocide and genocide of generations, means we must be more revolutionary than ever before. John Bellamy Foster. Not be afraid to raise the questions of altering, even dismantling current modes of production, modes of existence and corresponding societies and systems already in deformation. In case you wish to pledge support with a paid subscription, click here.